The chamber was larger than any structure ever built on Earth. It stretched for miles in every direction, carved from the heart of a dead star and filled with the representatives of over 800 alien species. Floating platforms held delegations from every corner of the known galaxy. Creatures of light sat beside beings made of living metal. Telepathic collectives shared space with hive minds that controlled entire solar systems. This was the grand chamber of the Galactic Confederation, the seat of power for a civilization that had ruled the stars for over 50,000 years. And in the center of it all, standing on a small platform that seemed almost insultingly modest, were 5 humans. Ambassador Thomas Reed had never felt so small in his entire life. He was 63 years old, a veteran diplomat who had negotiated peace treaties between nations that had been at war for centuries. He had faced down dictators and terrorists. He had walked into rooms where everyone wanted him dead and walked out with signed agreements. None of that had prepared him for this moment. The supreme arbiter of the Confederation floated above the assembly on a throne of crystallized energy. The being had no fixed form. It shifted between shapes constantly, sometimes appearing as a towering figure of pure light, sometimes as a swirling mass of geometric patterns that hurt the human eye to look at directly. "You stand before the collected wisdom of 800 civilizations," the arbiter announced. Its voice did not come from any single direction. It simply existed, filling every corner of the vast chamber. You represent a species that achieved faster than light travel only 3 of your years ago. You are the youngest, the smallest, the least advanced species ever to be offered membership in the Galactic Confederation. Thomas felt the weight of 1,000,000,000,000 eyes upon him. Some of those eyes were literally that massive orbs that studied humanity's representatives with ancient curiosity. Others were sensors, or psychic probes, or forms of perception that humans had no words for. "We are honored by your invitation," Thomas said. His voice was amplified by technology he did not understand, carrying to every corner of the impossible chamber. "Honor is not what we offer," the arbiter replied. "We offer survival. We offer advancement. We offer everything your species has dreamed of since you first looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond." A holographic display materialized around the human delegation. It showed Earth as it currently existed, then rapidly transformed to show what it could become. Cities that stretched into orbit. Ships that could cross galaxies in moments. Technology that could cure every disease, end every famine, solve every problem that had plagued humanity since the beginning of its existence. "All of this can be yours," the arbiter continued. "Medical knowledge that will extend your lifespans by centuries. Energy technology that will make your current power sources seem like burning wood. Weapons that will protect you from any threat. All we ask in return is that you join us. Become part of our network. Share your thoughts with the collective wisdom of the galaxy." Thomas looked at his team. Dr. Maria Santos, their chief scientist, was studying the holographic displays with barely contained excitement. General Victor Crane, their military advisor, kept his expression carefully neutral, but Thomas could see the hunger in his eyes. 2 junior diplomats, young people named David and Lisa, looked overwhelmed by the scale of what they were witnessing. "We will need time to consider your offer," Thomas said carefully. Silence fell over the chamber. Not the ordinary silence of people waiting for someone to speak, but a profound absence of sound that seemed to press against the humans like a physical force. "Time?" The arbiter's form flickered with what might have been confusion. "No species has ever asked for time. The benefits of membership are self-evident. The cost is negligible. There is nothing to consider." "Nevertheless," Thomas replied, keeping his voice steady, "we will need to consult with our governments. This is not a decision any 5 people can make on behalf of our entire species." Something rippled through the assembled delegations. Thomas could not read alien body language, but he sensed unease, perhaps even fear. "Very well," the Arbiter said finally. "You have one of your standard weeks to deliberate. We will send an ambassador to Earth to answer any questions your leaders may have." The humans were escorted from the chamber by beings that looked like floating jellyfish made of silver light. As they walked through corridors that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human mind could process, Dr. Santos leaned close to Thomas. "What just happened?" She whispered. "Why did you ask for time? Did you see what they were offering?" "I saw," Thomas replied quietly. "I also saw the way every other species in that room reacted when we didn't immediately accept." "What do you mean?" Thomas glanced back at the massive doors closing behind them, sealing away the chamber of 800 civilizations. "They were afraid, Maria, every single one of them. Not of us. Of what we might do by hesitating." 3 days later, the Confederation's ambassador arrived on Earth. His name was Vorath, and he belonged to a reptilian species called the Kelthari. He was 12 feet tall, covered in iridescent scales, and moved with the practiced grace of someone who had been conducting diplomacy since before humans invented writing. He met with the young United Nations Security Council in a specially constructed chamber in Geneva. The world's most powerful leaders sat before him, representatives of nations that had spent centuries fighting each other for scraps. Of a single planet, Vorath found their divisions amusing. "I bring greetings from the Galactic Confederation," he announced, "and I bring offers that will transform your civilization forever." He laid out the same proposals that had been presented in the Grand Chamber: medicine, technology, protection, all the wonders of the galaxy, available to humanity for the simple price of joining the network. The world leaders listened with growing excitement. The Prime Minister of Britain could barely contain her enthusiasm. The President of China was already calculating how this technology could be used. The American President leaned forward in his seat, ready to accept DOT, and General Crane spoke. "We refuse." The chamber went silent. Vorath's scales shifted color, displaying patterns that no human could interpret, but that clearly indicated profound shock. "I do not understand," the ambassador said slowly. "Perhaps there was an error in translation." "There was no error," General Crane replied. His voice was calm, almost cold. "Humanity declines your offer. All of your offers. We will not join the Confederation. We will not accept your technology. We will not connect to your network." "This is madness," Vorath sputtered. "No species has ever refused. In 50,000 years of Confederation history, every civilization that has been contacted has eagerly accepted membership. Then we will be the first to say no." Vorath turned to the other world leaders, expecting them to overrule this military officer. But something strange had happened in the room. The excitement had faded from their faces, replaced by expressions of grim determination. They had received information during the meeting. Discreet messages passed through secure channels. The American president stood. "The general speaks for all of humanity," he announced. "We appreciate your offer, Ambassador. But the answer is no." Vorath stared at them for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the chamber. His ship left Earth's atmosphere within the hour, accelerating toward the stars at speeds that human technology could not match DOT in the empty chamber. General Crane turned to face the assembled leaders. "What did you find?" The British Prime Minister asked quietly. Crane activated a holographic display. It showed energy signatures, communication patterns, and something else. Something hidden beneath all the generous offers and promises of advancement. "The Confederation's network is not just a communication system," he explained. "It is a trap. Every species that joins becomes part of something larger. And every 10,000 years, that something feeds." Feeds on what? Crane's expression darkened. On everything. Every thought. Every memory. Every consciousness connected to their network. The civilizations do not just join the Confederation. They become food. Silence fell over the room. Outside, the sun was setting over Geneva, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. How do we know this? Someone asked. Crane pulled up another display. Ancient symbols found buried in ice, carved into stone, hidden in places that humans had only recently discovered. Because we were warned, he said quietly. 14 million years ago, someone wanted to make sure we would never forget. The message was simple, written in a language that predated human civilization, but that human minds could somehow understand. Do not join, do not connect, do not trust. They are coming. As news of humanity's refusal spread through the galaxy, something else began to spread as well. Fear. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Confederation faced a species that had said no, and they had no idea why. 6 months had passed since humanity refused the Confederation's offer, and the galaxy had not stopped talking about it. In the Grand Chamber, emergency sessions had become daily occurrences. Species that had not communicated in centuries were suddenly reaching out to each other, sharing theories about the strange creatures from the small blue planet. Trade routes shifted. Military alliances reformed. The entire political structure of the Federation trembled beneath the weight of a single word. No. High. Counselor Marin stood before the Supreme Arbiter, her crystalline form flickering with barely contained anxiety. She had served the Confederation for over 3,000 years, guiding species through the integration process, helping them understand the benefits of connection. She had never failed. Until now. The humans continue to refuse all contact, she reported. We have sent 17 additional diplomatic missions. Each one has been turned away at the edge of their solar system. They have constructed defensive platforms around their planet. They are preparing for war. War? The Arbiter's form shifted into something darker, more angular. They cannot possibly believe they can fight us. Their technology is primitive. Their population is insignificant. They do not even control their own solar system. And yet they are preparing, Marin replied. More than that, they are expanding. In the last 6 months, they have established colonies on 3 moons and 2 planets within their system. Their population growth has accelerated by 400%. They are building something, Arbiter. Something large. The chamber buzzed with concerned murmurs from the assembled delegations. Representatives from 1,000 worlds watched the holographic displays showing human activity. Ships launching from Earth in unprecedented numbers. Factories appearing on previously barren worlds. Communication arrays pointed not toward Confederation space, but toward the empty regions beyond the galactic rim. What are they communicating with? Someone asked. No one had an answer. On Earth, Director Anna Cole stood in the underground command center known only as Project Awakening. She was 47 years old, a former intelligence officer who had spent her career uncovering secrets that governments wanted to stay buried. Now she commanded humanity's most important operation. Around her, screens displayed information that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. Star maps, energy signatures, communications from sources that predated human civilization by millions of years. Status report, she demanded. Captain James Webb, her chief operations officer, stepped forward. He was a tall man with graying hair and the kind of calm demeanor that came from having faced death more times than he could count. The archive translation is 70% complete, he reported. We now have confirmation of what the warnings meant. The Confederation is not what it appears to be. Tell me something I do not know. Webb pulled up a holographic display. It showed the galaxy, but not as modern astronomers understood it. This was an older map, created by beings who had traveled the stars when Earth was still a ball of molten rock. 14 million years ago, there were over 10,000 spacefaring civilizations in this galaxy. They had achieved things we can barely imagine. Faster-than-light travel was common. Communication across the galaxy was instantaneous. They had mastered technologies that could reshape planets, move stars, even manipulate time itself. He zoomed in on a region of space that, in the modern era, was completely empty. Then they encountered something. The archives call them the Devourers. Beings from outside our galaxy, perhaps from outside our universe entirely. They do not consume physical matter. They consume consciousness, thought, identity, everything that makes a species more than just biological machines. And the Confederation? Anna asked, though she already suspected the answer. The Confederation was created by the Devourers. It is a farming system. Every species that joins the network becomes part of a connected whole. They share thoughts, share technology, share everything. It feels like advancement. It feels like evolution. But it is actually preparation. Preparation for what? Webb's expression darkened. The harvest. Every 10,000 years, the Devourers return. They feed on everything connected to the network. 10 trillion minds consumed in an instant. Then they leave, and the Confederation begins rebuilding. Finding new species. Making new offers. Growing the harvest for the next feeding. Anna felt cold, despite the warmth of the underground bunker. When is the next harvest? 18 months from now. In the depths of space, Ambassador Vorath paced the deck of his diplomatic vessel. He had been recalled from Earth in disgrace, blamed for failing to secure humanity's membership. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. He should have been wallowing in self-pity. Instead, he was terrified. Something about the humans haunted him. The way they had looked at him when they refused. Not with fear, not with ignorance, but with something that looked almost like pity. "Ambassador," his aide called out. "You need to see this." Vorath moved to the communication station. A message was being broadcast on frequencies that the Confederation rarely monitored. Frequencies that were supposedly inactive, remnants of communication systems that had been abandoned millions of years ago. The message was in a language that no living species should have been able to understand. But somehow, impossibly, Vorath recognized it. It was the old tongue. The language of the architects, the species that had founded the Confederation 50,000 years ago. A language that was supposed to be extinct. "Children of the garden," the message said. "The sleepers awaken. The cycle ends. Prepare for the final choice." Vorath's scales turned pale. Where is this coming from? He demanded. His aide's hands trembled as she traced the signal. "Earth, Ambassador. The humans are broadcasting in the language of the architects." Back on Earth, Anna Cole received an update from her communications team. "They heard us," the team leader reported. "Every ship in Confederation space, every outpost, every station. They all received the message." "Good," Anna replied. "How long until they figure out what it means?" "Unknown. The language has been dead for so long that most species do not even know it ever existed. But someone will remember. Someone always does." Anna turned to look at the massive screen that dominated the command center. It showed a star map, but this one was different from anything the Confederation used. It showed locations that modern astronomers had never mapped. Hidden places, ancient refuges, worlds that had been deliberately erased from galactic records. "How many have responded to our signal?" she asked. 47 so far. More are coming online every hour. 47 civilizations. Species that had refused the Confederation's offer long before humanity even existed. species that had hidden themselves in the dark spaces between stars. Waiting for this moment, Anna allowed herself a small smile. Send the next phase of the message. Tell them it is time to stop hiding. In the Grand Chamber, the Supreme Arbiter received reports of the mysterious transmission. Its form flickered between shapes more rapidly than anyone had ever seen, displaying patterns that indicated deep disturbance. Find out what they are doing, it commanded. Find out who they are talking to. And find out how they learned the old tongue. High Counselor Marin bowed her head in acknowledgement. And if they will not tell us? The Arbiter's form solidified into something cold and hard. Then we will make them. One way or another, humanity will learn that no one refuses the Confederation. No one escapes the harvest. But even as the Arbiter spoke those words, doubt crept into minds across the galaxy. For the first time in 50,000 years, species began to whisper questions that had never been asked. What if the humans knew something? What if the Confederation was not what it claimed to be? What if everything they believed was a lie? The panic had only begun. The truth spread like wildfire through the galaxy. It started as whispers. Rumors passed between traders at remote stations. Stories shared by military officers who had seen things they could not explain. Questions asked by scientists who had noticed inconsistencies in the Confederation's official history. Then the humans released the archives. Every communication frequency, every data network, every system capable of receiving information was suddenly flooded with evidence. Documents dating back millions of years. Recordings of events that the Confederation had claimed never happened. Testimony from civilizations that were supposed to be extinct. The harvest was real. And it was coming. In the Grand Chamber, chaos reigned. Species that had been loyal members of the Confederation for thousands of years were demanding explanations. Military commanders were recalling their fleets. Trade agreements were being dissolved. The careful order that had maintained galactic civilization for 50 millennia was crumbling in a matter of days. High Counselor Marin tried desperately to restore control. These documents are forgeries, she insisted, her crystalline form blazing with artificial confidence. The humans are trying to divide us. They fear our power, so they spread lies to weaken our unity. Then explain the signatures, demanded Admiral Korth, commander of the Confederation's 7th Fleet. He was a massive being, covered in chitinous armor that had evolved over millions of years of warfare. My scientists have verified the energy patterns in these recordings. They match nothing in our current technology. They are genuinely ancient. Perhaps corrupted data from a previous era. Perhaps clever fabrications designed to deceive our verification systems. Or perhaps, Korth replied slowly, the humans are telling the truth. The chamber erupted in shouting. Species that had been allies for centuries turned on each other. Accusations flew back and forth. In the midst of the chaos, Marin received a private communication from the Supreme Arbiter. Come to my chambers, immediately. She found the Arbiter alone, its form shifting more rapidly than she had ever seen. The being that had ruled the Confederation with absolute authority for over 10,000 years seemed almost uncertain. You wanted to see me, Supreme One? The humans must be stopped, the Arbiter said. Their message has reached too many ears. Too many species are beginning to question. We could launch a military strike. Destroy their homeworld before they spread more lies. No. The Arbiter's form solidified briefly into something that might have been frustration. Their planet is now protected by technologies we do not understand. They have allies we cannot identify. And any attack would only confirm their accusations. Then what do you suggest? The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. We must offer them something greater than anything we have offered before. Something no species has ever refused. We must make them want to join us. Marin's crystalline form flickered with surprise. What could possibly be greater than what we have already offered? Access to the core systems, full integration with the founding consciousness, equality with the architects themselves. Even after 3,000 years of service, Marin had never been offered such things. The core systems were the heart of the Confederation, the ancient technologies that made everything else possible. The founding consciousness was the collected wisdom of every species that had ever joined the network. To offer such access to primitive beings like humans was unprecedented. And if they refuse again? The Arbiter's form darkened. Then we will have no choice but to accelerate the harvest. We will collect what we can before they can spread more truth. It will be messy. Many will resist. But the alternative is losing everything. On Earth, Director Cole received intelligence about the Confederation's plans. Her sources within their network, species that had secretly allied with humanity, reported everything. They are desperate, she told her command staff. That means we are winning. Captain Webb studied the tactical displays with concern. We have awoken 83 hidden civilizations so far. Another 200 are considering joining us. But even combined, we cannot match the Confederation's military power. If they decide to attack in force, we will lose. They will not attack, Cole replied. They cannot afford to. Every ship they send against us is a ship not available to maintain order in their own territory. Half their member species are already demanding answers. A quarter are on the verge of rebellion, and the rest? Terrified. But not of us. Of what comes next. She pulled up a holographic display showing the edge of the galaxy. Beyond the mapped regions, beyond the farthest Confederation outposts, something was stirring. Energy patterns that had been dormant for 10,000 years were beginning to pulse with renewed activity. The Devourers know something is wrong, Cole explained. They can sense the disruption in the network. They are preparing to harvest early. How much time do we have? 8 months. Maybe less. Dr. Samuel Foster, chief scientist of Project Awakening, stepped forward. He was an older man, hair completely white, hands steady despite the weight of responsibility he carried. There is another option, he said quietly. The archives mention a weapon. Something built by the ancient civilization specifically to fight the Devourers. Why was it not used before? Because using it would require disconnecting every species from the network simultaneously. The shock would be catastrophic. Billions would die from the sudden isolation. Entire civilizations would collapse. Webb shook his head. We cannot ask the galaxy to accept that. Even if they believed us about the harvest, no one would agree to such destruction. They might not have to, Foster replied. He pulled up new data, information that had been buried in the deepest layers of the ancient archives. The weapon does not actually require disconnection. It requires something else, something that only a species completely outside the network could provide. Cole leaned forward. What kind of something? A carrier signal. The weapon uses consciousness as a delivery system. It needs minds that are not connected to the Confederation network to channel its energy. Minds that the Devourers cannot anticipate or defend against. Human minds. Foster nodded slowly. Human minds. Millions of them. All working together. All focused on a single purpose. The ancient builders knew this day would come. They designed the weapon to be activated by whoever remained outside the network. They knew about us. They knew about someone. They could not have predicted would be human specifically. But they knew that eventually a species would say no. And they made sure that species would have the tools to fight back. Cole turned to look at the star map. 83 civilizations awake. 200 more considering alliance. Billions of humans ready to do whatever was necessary to survive. How do we activate this weapon? Foster's expression grew grave. That is the problem. The activation key is not on Earth. It is not hidden in any of the archives. It is somewhere else entirely. Where? The Confederation's capital. The Grand Chamber itself, built directly into the structure that the Devourers created to harvest. Consciousness. Webb let out a bitter laugh. So the only way to save the galaxy is to walk into the heart of enemy territory and activate a weapon they do not know exists. Essentially. Yes. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then she straightened her shoulders and turned to face her team. Then that is exactly what we will do. Begin planning the infiltration. We have 8 months to prepare. And when we walk into that chamber, we will not be asking permission. We will not be negotiating terms. She looked up at the stars visible through the command center's viewport. We will be refusing them one final time. And this time, that refusal will save every living being in the galaxy. In the darkness beyond mapped space, the Devourers stirred. They had waited 10,000 years for this moment. Soon, they would feed again. But something was different this time. Something had changed. For the first time in their ancient existence, they felt something they had never experienced. Before uncertainty, the rebellion began on 100 worlds. Simultaneously, species that had been loyal, members of the Confederation for millennia, suddenly rose up. Against their integration systems, they tore out neural implants. They destroyed communication arrays. They disconnected themselves from the network that had defined their civilizations for thousands of years. And they did it because the humans had shown them the truth. In the Grand Chamber, High Counselor Marin watched the chaos unfold on holographic displays that flickered with error messages. Entire sectors were going dark. Military units were refusing orders. The careful structure that had maintained galactic order was dissolving like sand in a storm. "This is impossible," she whispered. "They cannot all disconnect at once. The withdrawal shock alone would kill them." Admiral Korth stood beside her, his chitinous armor scarred from a recent battle against rebel forces. "They have found another way," he reported grimly. "The humans provided them with something. Technology that eases the disconnection process. Technology that should not exist. From the archives? Apparently. The ancient civilizations left more than just warnings. They left tools." Marin turned to face the Supreme Arbiter, but the throne of crystallized energy was empty. The being that had ruled the Confederation for 10,000 years had withdrawn to its private chambers and refused all communication. She was alone. "What do we do?" Someone asked from the assembly floor. The voice belonged to a young diplomat, barely a century old, whose species had joined the Confederation only recently. "If the humans are telling the truth, then everything we believed is a lie." "The humans are manipulating you," Marin replied, but even she could hear the desperation in her voice. "They want to destroy us because they fear our power. Then why are they not attacking? They have unified over 100 civilizations. They have technology we cannot match. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so months ago." Marin had no answer. On Earth, the final preparations were underway. Captain Rachel Torres stood in the center of the staging area, watching teams of soldiers and scientists prepare for the most dangerous mission in human history. She was 35 years old, a veteran of 3 interstellar conflicts, chosen for this operation because she had something that most humans lacked. She had been connected to the Confederation network 5 years ago, before humanity had received the warnings, before they understood the truth. Torres had volunteered for an experimental program. For 3 months, she had experienced what it felt like to be part of the collective consciousness. She had felt the presence of trillions of minds, all connected, all sharing. And she had felt something else beneath the surface. Something hungry. "You understand what you are asking of yourself," Director Cole said, standing beside her. Once you enter the grand chamber, there will be no extraction, no rescue. If something goes wrong, you will be alone. I know. The weapon requires direct mental contact with the core systems. You will have to reconnect to the network, at least temporarily. The Devourers will sense you the moment you do. I know. Cole studied her face carefully. Why did you volunteer for this? Torres was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft but steady. When I was connected, I felt what the harvest actually means. I experienced memories that were not my own. Civilizations that had been consumed, their thoughts preserved in the network like flies in amber. They are still aware, Director. Still conscious. Still suffering. For 10,000 years. She looked up at the stars visible through the hangar's viewport. If there is even a chance I can end that suffering, then the risk is worth it. The infiltration team consisted of 12 humans, each selected for specific skills. Engineers who could bypass alien security systems. Scientists who understood the ancient technology. Soldiers who could fight in any environment. And Torres, who alone among them knew what it felt like to touch the network. Their transport was not a human vessel. It was a ship provided by one of the awakened civilizations, a species called the Velith, who had hidden themselves in the dark between stars for over 8 million years. The ship looked like nothing humans had ever built. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and its interior operated on principles that violated several laws of physics. Elder Korvath of the Velith addressed the team before departure. Your species is young, he said. His form was vaguely humanoid, but composed of what appeared to be solidified shadows. You have existed for only the blink of an eye in cosmic terms. Many of the awakened civilizations questioned whether you could be trusted with this responsibility. And what did you tell them? Torres asked. I told them that age means nothing. Wisdom is not measured in years. And courage has nothing to do with how long a species has walked among the stars. He moved closer, his shadow form flickering with patterns that might have been emotion. The ancient builders chose well when they left their warnings on your world. They saw something in your species. A stubbornness. A refusal to accept what others tell you must be true. That quality has frustrated the Confederation. It has terrified the Devourers. And it may yet save us all. No pressure, muttered Lieutenant Marcos Grant, the team's demolitions expert. Korvath made a sound that might have been laughter. Pressure is what creates diamonds, human. And you are about to experience more pressure than any species in galactic history. The journey to the Confederation's capital took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of preparation. 3 weeks of reviewing plans that had been refined thousands of times. 3 weeks of waiting while the galaxy burned around them. When they finally arrived, Torres stood at the viewport and stared at the structure that housed the Grand Chamber God. It was larger than any planet she had ever seen. A massive construct of metal and energy, carved from the heart of a dead star. Home to the seat of power for a civilization that had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. And somewhere inside it, hidden in the core systems that no outsider had ever accessed, was the weapon that could end the harvest forever. Final checks, Torres announced. We go in 12 hours. The team dispersed to their stations. Grant checked his explosives. Dr. Linda Park, their technology specialist, ran final diagnostics on the devices they would use to interface with the ancient systems. Security officers Malik and Yuki reviewed escape routes they all knew they would probably never use. Torres remained at the viewport, staring at the impossible structure before them. Scared? Asked Webb, who had insisted on accompanying the mission despite his age. Terrified, Torres admitted, but not of dying. I am scared of what happens if we fail. All those civilizations trusting us. All those people who disconnected from the network because they believed we could save them. If we do not succeed, they will all be consumed. Then we will not fail. How can you be so certain?" Webb smiled, the same steady expression he had worn through every crisis of his career. "Because we are human. And humans do not know how to give up." 12 hours later, the infiltration began. The team slipped past defenses that should have been impenetrable. They moved through corridors that had not seen unauthorized visitors in millennia. They bypassed security systems designed by intelligences far beyond human comprehension. And with every step, they got closer to the heart of the construct. Torres could feel the network pressing against her consciousness, trying to reconnect, trying to pull her back in. She resisted, focusing on the mission, focusing on the faces of everyone who was counting on her. And she felt something else. The Devourers. They were close now. So close that she could sense their presence, even through the barriers protecting her mind. They were vast, ancient, hungry. They had consumed trillions of minds over billions of years. And they were preparing to feed again. But they had felt her too. And for the first time in their ancient existence. They were curious. What manner of being was this, they wondered? Who could touch their network but not be consumed by it? What species had produced such a creature? They reached out with tendrils of pure thought, probing, testing. Torres pushed them back with every ounce of willpower she possessed. "I am human," she whispered into the void. "And I am coming for you." In the darkness beyond the galaxy, the Devourers stirred with something that might have been anticipation. The final confrontation was about to begin. The heart of the construct was nothing like Torres had expected. She had imagined vast machines, complex systems of alien technology beyond human comprehension. Instead, she found a chamber filled with light. Pure, warm, gentle light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. In the center of the chamber stood a single pillar of crystallized energy, the core of the Confederation network, the harvesting system that had consumed trillions of minds over billions of years. And standing before it, waiting for her, was the Supreme Arbiter. "I knew you would come," the being said. Its form had stabilized into something almost human-shaped, as if making an effort to communicate on her level. "I have watched your species since you first crawled out of your oceans. So determined, so stubborn, so utterly unwilling to accept your place in the natural order." Torres kept her weapon raised, though she knew it would do nothing against a being of pure energy. "Where is my team?" "Safe, for now. I wanted to speak with you alone before the harvest begins." "The harvest will not begin. That is why I am here." The Arbiter made a sound that might have been laughter. "You think you can stop something that has existed since before your galaxy formed? The Devourers are not invaders, human. They are gardeners. They planted the seeds of consciousness across the universe. They nurtured civilizations. They connected minds across impossible distances. Everything you call intelligence, everything you believe makes you special, exists because they created it, so they could eat it, so they could transcend it. The harvest is not death. It is transformation. Every mind consumed becomes part of something greater. The Devourers carry the essence of trillions of beings within them. They preserve what would otherwise be lost to entropy and time. Torres felt the network pressing against her consciousness. Stronger now, almost overwhelming. "I felt those preserved minds," she said quietly, "when I was connected. They are not preserved. They are imprisoned. They suffer endlessly, aware of what they were, unable to die, unable to escape." The Arbiter's form flickered. "A necessary price for immortality. It is not immortality. It is torture. And it ends today." Torres raised her hand, revealing the device she had carried from Earth. It looked simple, almost primitive compared to the technology surrounding them. A small metal cylinder with symbols etched into its surface. symbols that matched the ones found in the ancient archives. The Arbiter's form shifted rapidly, patterns indicating alarm. Where did you get that? From the ones who refused before us. The civilizations that saw what the Confederation really was and chose to hide rather than be harvested. They preserved this weapon across millions of years, waiting for someone brave enough to use it. You do not understand what that device will do. It will not just end the harvest. It will sever every connection in the network simultaneously. Billions of minds ripped apart in an instant. The shock will kill most of them. No, Torres replied. It will not, because they have already disconnected. She watched understanding dawn in the Arbiter's shifting form. The rebellion, the awakened civilizations. They were not just fighting against us. They were preparing. For months now, species across the galaxy have been gradually withdrawing from the network. The technology we provided eases the transition. By the time I activate this weapon, there will be no one left connected except those who choose to remain. And the Devourers? Torres smiled, and there was no warmth in it. The Devourers will find that the harvest they have waited 10,000 years for is empty. No minds to consume. No consciousness to absorb. Just hollow systems full of nothing but their own hunger. The Arbiter's form expanded, filling the chamber with crackling energy. I will not allow this. I have served the Devourers for 50,000 years. I have prepared 100 harvests. I will not be defeated by primitives who cannot even control their own planet. It reached toward Torres with tendrils of pure power. But before it could touch her, something else entered the chamber. Light, but not the gentle warmth that filled the space. This was harsh, brilliant, blazing light that seemed to cut through everything it touched. Captain Webb stepped through the breach, followed by the rest of the team. They were battered, wounded, but alive. Thought you might need backup, Webb said, raising a weapon that hummed with ancient energy. Behind them came others. Elder Korvath of the Velith, his shadow form blazing with reflected light. Admiral Korth, who had abandoned the Confederation to join the rebellion. High Counselor Marin, her crystalline form dim but determined. And behind them, displayed on holographic screens that materialized throughout the chamber, were the faces of billions, humans, Velith, Kelthari, species from across the galaxy, all watching, all waiting. You stand alone. Arbiter, Torres said. The Confederation is over. The harvest is canceled, and the Devourers will go hungry. The Arbiter's form collapsed in on itself, condensing into something small and desperate. You do not understand. If the Devourers do not feed, they will come here themselves. They will tear this galaxy apart looking for sustenance. Everything will be destroyed. No, Torres replied. They will find something else instead. She activated the device. The effect was instantaneous. Every connection in the network severed simultaneously. The pillar of crystallized energy shattered into 1 trillion fragments. The construct that housed the Grand Chamber groaned as systems that had operated for 50 millennia suddenly went dark. But the weapon did more than just destroy the network. It sent a signal. A beacon that reached across dimensions, across the boundaries of reality itself, to the place where the Devourers waited, and the signal was a message. We know what you are, Torres broadcast into the void. We know what you have done, and we are not afraid. The Devourers heard. For the first time in their ancient existence, something had defied them. Something had refused to be harvested. Something had looked into the face of beings older than galaxies and said no. They reached toward the signal, preparing to consume whatever had dared challenge them, and they found not fear, not submission, not the sweet surrender of minds ready to be devoured. They found walls. The weapon had done more than sever connections. It had created barriers around every disconnected consciousness in the galaxy. Barriers made of willpower and determination, and the stubborn refusal to accept an unjust fate. Barriers that the Devourers could not penetrate. For the first time in billions of years, they were denied. They raged against the barriers. They threw the full weight of their cosmic power against the shields protecting the galaxy. They screamed across dimensions with voices that could shatter stars, and the barriers held. On Earth, Director Cole watched the energy readings spike to impossible levels, then gradually, slowly begin to fade. "They are retreating," Dr. Foster reported, disbelief evident in his voice. "The Devourers are actually retreating. They cannot feed," Cole replied quietly. "They never imagined that anyone would refuse. They have no strategy for dealing with prey that fights back." In the shattered remains of the Grand Chamber, Torres watched the last fragments of the Arbiter dissolve into nothing. The being that had served the Devourers for 50,000 years faded without a sound, without a final word, without even a struggle. Webb helped her to her feet. "We did it," he said. "It is actually over." Torres looked around at the destruction, at the allies who had come from across the galaxy to stand with them, at the holographic faces of billions who had trusted humanity to save them. "No," she replied. "It is just beginning." 1 year later, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Confederation was gone, replaced by a loose alliance of independent civilizations. Trade still flowed. Communication still connected distant worlds. But the network was gone. Each species remained separate, distinct, free. On Earth, a celebration was underway. The first anniversary of Liberation Day, when the harvest was prevented and the Devourers were driven back. In cities around the world, humans gathered to remember what they had accomplished. Torres stood on a balcony overlooking the festivities, joined by faces that had become familiar over the past year. Webb, now retired from active service. Elder Korvath, whose species had finally emerged from hiding. Admiral Korth, who is helping rebuild a military dedicated to defense rather than oppression. "Do you think they will return?" Korvath asked quietly. Torres considered the question for a long moment. "Eventually. Beings like that do not simply give up. They will adapt. They will find new strategies. They will try again. Then what was the point of all this? If the threat is not eliminated, have we really won anything?" Torres smiled, watching the celebrating crowds below. "We proved something today. We proved that no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how ancient the threat, there is always hope. We proved that a single species, young and stubborn, and completely unwilling to accept defeat, can change the course of galactic history." She turned to face her companions. "And we proved that the most powerful word in any language is also the simplest. No, we refused their offers. We refused their threats. We refused to accept the fate they had chosen for us. And in refusing, we saved everyone." Korvath made his laughing sound again. "Humans, you are the most frustrating species I have ever encountered. And I have existed for 8 million years. You are welcome," Torres replied. As the celebrations continued below. As a galaxy slowly learned what it meant to be truly free, humanity looked up at the stars with new eyes. They had refused to join. They had refused to negotiate. They had refused to surrender. And in doing so, they had become something no one had ever expected. They had become hope. The Devourers still lurked beyond the boundaries of reality, waiting for their chance. Other threats would emerge from the depths of space. New challenges would test the courage of every species that called this galaxy home. But now they would face those challenges together, as allies, as equals, as free beings who had learned the most important lesson the universe had to teach. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is simply say no. And mean it.